your dad is a corrections officer. What are some of the things he's coming home to you saying that?
And she'd be out in the parking lot and she'd act like she was the doctor's assistant. So she'd just answer, doctor.
And I have family that didn't agree. I got uncle that didn't agree with the way it was going, and I got an uncle that was like, this is what it is.
We were doing robberies and shit, and this old man went and made some phone calls and told on us, man. I wouldn't look at it any different. I'd be like, that piece of shit.
I'm here to have a decent conversation and talk about some real shit, not sit here and throw lugs. And
Did they leave the village, or did they just, make it worse?
You're dealing with people that believe if they die in battle, they go to heaven and get 77 fucking virgins.
Okay, so maybe once upon a time, the 13 and the MS-13 came from California, obviously.
All right, guys, welcome back to another Sit Down with Sam. And I got a special guest today, Miss Julie. She's an ex-CO, and she's going to share her story. So without further ado, I'll just let her take it from there. What's up, Julie?
Hey, not too much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. So what I wanted to do is get your story starting from like 10, 11, 12, the years where the formative years where your life starts taking shape and all that stuff. How is your household, both parents and all that, just kind of give us a rundown of that.
Sure. Ironic, because I was at coffee today with a friend and we were talking about that, back in our childhood and things like that. Well, I grew up in Woodland, California, born and raised here most of my life. And I came from a two-parent home, very conservative. We had a lot of rules. And I was going to say 10 and 11 years old. It's funny. I think back when I went to private school and whatnot. I was raised Catholic to a certain point, went to a Catholic school, boys and girls. It wasn't just, it was boys and girls. And then after fourth grade, Woodland Christian School started. So I went there fifth grade on up. And I wasn't familiar with a Christian school, but learned Bible verses, had a lot of great friends. In fact, some of those friends, they're still my friends today. A lot of my childhood friends, we go out and do things. And really, I had a good upbringing. My parents, basically, I was a spoiled kid. I'm the youngest. And it's like my dad and I were talking recently because they're getting older. So they tell us stories all the time. And he goes, you kids were so spoiled. He goes, we never denied you guys of anything and whatnot. The house I grew up with was 3 bedrooms. I shared a bedroom with my older sister. We had a swimming pool in the background, and all of our friends were always over swimming. And we just had a really nice upbringing. And then come 7th grade, middle of my 8th grade year, still going to Christian school, still hanging out with the same friends. When I was in junior high, I played volleyball on the school's volleyball team. My sister did too. It was a lot of fun. We didn't have very many matches with other schools because a lot of the Christian schools were new back then. And I used to swim on the swim team when I was younger, have a lot of ribbons and things like that. And I was very athletic and always played like softball, things like that, always riding my bike or going walking. And our town back then was so safe. Woodland was so safe. We could ride our bikes everywhere, and it's like at the end of the school year, all of us kids, no matter what grade we were in, as soon as we left school, we'd go home and change because we weren't allowed to wear shorts to school. It was always dresses or culottes and stuff being at a private school.
Uniform,
yeah, that kind of thing. And anyways, we go home, change clothes. We'd all meet up at somebody's house. We'd ride our bikes to McDonald's and eat lunch. And then we'd get back on our bikes and just ride all over Woodland and whatnot. There was one street our parents wouldn't let us cross, and because the railroad tracks and stuff, and it was kind of out in the country back then, was East Street. But we just always had fun hanging out and whatnot. We were never bored, always active. And then comes 8th grade. My 8th grade year, this is funny. Well, not really funny, but my dad designed rice mills, supervised the construction of the rice mills. And since he did that, he was the only one that knew how to run the control room. So the summer going into my 8th grade year, my dad was back in Greenville, Mississippi, and they were working on the rice mill. My best friend that I grew up with at the time, we went to the Christian school here. Her family went back there that summer and got acquainted. And then we went back there to visit my dad while he was working. And, you know, I was able to get together with her, and we rode 3-wheelers everywhere. It was so much fun because she lived out in the country and they had 3-wheelers. And we got to do that. And then the middle of my 8th grade year, here we are. I always call Woodland my little cow town. We get uprooted. There's nothing. In fact, we were talking about that at lunch today. My dad said, you know, growing up here, you know, we had whites, Hispanics, blacks, Orientals and stuff. He goes, there was no race. We never saw race because we grew up with all these kids and stuff. And we got uprooted. My parents put us in a private school back there because the public school back there was like 90% African American. And they said, we don't want you girls going to a public school because they were afraid maybe something might happen to us because you don't know. You know, you're going to a whole nother state. You just don't know. And so it was my brother and sister. We went to this private school. We went to a basketball game before we were to start school the next Monday. My brother was already there for a semester going to school. And the first thing they said to us at the basketball game was, are you for Ole Miss or State? And we're like, what's that? You know? And I said, well, we like the 49ers.
College.
And I was I'm like, what's Ole Miss? And that's those are the big rivalries in Mississippi is Ole Miss and Mississippi State for football. They don't really care about pro football back there. It's all college based and whatnot. And football back there is huge. It's
in
almost
the South for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like Friday Night Lights. And that's before I ever heard about that show, Friday Night Lights. But it's huge back there. They never had any sports. I mean, they never had a volleyball team. They never had girls softball at the school. The only thing the girls could get involved in was basketball and track. Well, I think it was my 9th grade year going into 10th grade year. I was practicing throwing the shot put and discus. And I practiced, you know, the whole track season. I was supposed to be in all these meets. And then our coach said, oh, well, we'll just let Carrie do it. And I was so mad. I'd show up for every practice. I took the shot put and discus home with me and practice every weekend over Easter vacation. And when it came down to it, he goes, okay, we want you to come to the meet today. This is what you're going to do and stuff. I'd sit there. And I was like sitting there to myself going, okay, this isn't fair, you know? And then, you know, back when you're a teenager, your parents are like, okay, life's not fair. You know, sometimes it doesn't register and whatnot. But my senior year of high school, I did swim again. And that was fun, going to see all kinds of different towns and cities in Mississippi. And I remember this one swim meet I was at, and I don't remember what town it was, but they had all these plantations you could tour. So it's like the day before our meet started, we got down there a day early and we went on a couple plantation tours, and they were dressed in the antebellum dresses, and the guys were, you know, in Civil War outfits and stuff. And of course, a Dixie flag was back there everywhere before.
Oh yeah, it's a trip though. I've been to the plantations. It's crazy. It's like going on a time machine.
It is, and they're beautiful. You know, they really are. But as far as like growing up, my teenage years and through high school, I never experienced with any drugs. I never even knew until my 20-year high school reunion that some of the boys smoked pot. I was just like clueless.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. And from what I know, they never did any hard drugs. There was no gangs at our school. Everybody's attention, because it was a college prep school, was on their studies so they could get into a prestigious college, whether it was, somewhere in the South or back East or wherever. That's what their focus was on. And then, like I said, it was my 20-year high school reunion. I went back there and and they're like, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so, their brains are all fried out, and whatnot. And it's interesting. I think there's like 3 or 4 of us girls were the only ones that never finished getting a college education. Everybody else that I went to school with, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're bankers, teachers, they all have these, I don't want to say hoity-toity jobs, and then here I was a correctional officer for a while. And then once I wasn't that anymore, I'd start working in offices, like medical offices and hospitals. But getting back to the teenage years, oh my gosh, you talk about Southern ways. We never had proms back there, but we had all these cotillion clubs for the girls. And so I was in sub-dep cotillion. It's like being initiated for a sorority or fraternity, where you have to go through all that stuff. And then we'd have these
Real quick, did they haze you or anything like a sorority or fraternity or anything?
Well, back then they didn't call it hazing, but we had to do stupid stuff. I mean, this is hilarious. One Saturday night, when everybody's out cruising the main drag, they made us go into McDonald's and get on the floor and fry like bacon. And here's not only families in McDonald's, but all these teenagers, going in there to have their hamburgers and stuff. And here us girls we had to wear this little block on us that said sub-dep, knowing that you were basically a recruit going into this sorority. And so here we are, a couple of us on the floor in McDonald's frying like bacon, and you're so embarrassed, because it's just not, it's not the cool thing to do. And one time, part of the my initiation is what they called it. I missed one whole week because I was in California on vacation, and I was like, oh, thank goodness. But as soon as I got home, my sponsor person came to my house and she goes, okay, let's go. I guess she called my mom, told her she was coming. She made me wear an angel costume, a white angel costume with the wings on it and the little halo. She took us to the mall, and the other gals had on other costumes, and we had to sit there and stand on these things and start singing.
Oh man.
And it was hilarious. It was so embarrassing. And one of the guys, I'd either worked at a shoe store or jewelry store, that they were catty corner there. I don't know who it was, but he came over and he goes, you guys are being sacrilegious because we're singing Jesus loves the little children. Everybody's heard that one. And we were singing that and some other little kids Sunday school songs. And he got really mad at us. So my face kind of turned red. I was embarrassed. And so we left. And then guess where she takes us? The public library. Well, you can't sing in the public library. So we started singing in there, and we got kicked out. And I was like, okay, enough of this angel thing. If you're going to do something else, let's do it. But I'm done with this. But, I got initiated in there, and going to all the cotillion dances, especially like at Christmas time. I mean, we were in formal ball gowns, nothing like what you see today, the kids wearing. I mean, these are very formal. Some of the girls had on the long white gloves, and some girls were in antebellum dresses, and some of us were just in these beautiful ball gowns, and all the guys were in Texas. And the dance would be at the country club, and everybody would get introduced like at a debutante ball. And so we'd stand up there, they would introduce us saying, Miss Julie Tolson, the daughter of William and Marcia Tolson from Woodland, California, but now reside in Greenville, Mississippi. Then they'd introduce your date. my date was John Strange. He was in my homeroom class. Mr. John Strange, the son of da 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 da. And we'd stand up there for a minute. They'd take our picture, and then we'd walk down the aisle and hear your parents and people that weren't in the cotillion club sitting there watching you do your march thing. And then after everybody got introduced, then all the parents and everybody left, and then we had a formal dance. So it was so different, you know. I my friend Karen and I, that you know, because of our parents being transferred back there, we'd always think sometimes, gosh, I wonder what it would be like if we went to high school in Woodland, you know, what the difference would be like and whatnot. Because we had a closed campus. We couldn't leave for lunch or anything like that. They had a grill, not a cafeteria, but a grill. You could get fried chicken. You can get chicken and biscuits or steak and biscuits. They grilled hamburgers and fries. They had pizza. They had a salad bar. I mean, basically any kind of junk food you wanted. But a lot of us brought our lunches or didn't bring lunch because all the girls were always trying to keep our weight down, you know. And I was one that I struggled with my weight from the time I was born till today and stuff. Not that you want to hear that, but I was my mom's biggest baby. I was 10 pounds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm still big. I'm not proud of it, but I always battle with my weight. I'm either up or down. But, you know,
it's just biology, you know.
Well, it is. But, you know, I was very fortunate. I'll get back to this. One of my girlfriends back there, her name was Angie, and her dad we had just got out of 9th grade. It was a summer going into our 10th grade year. I'd never been to a rock and roll concert in my life or to New Orleans. And she had the cutest car. It was a red convertible Volkswagen Bug. And so her dad drove us down to New Orleans in this Bug. And we went to the second annual Day of Rock and Roll down there. It was a 2-day concert, but most of the main bands we wanted to see were playing. It was that Friday or Saturday night. Back in the day, we saw Christopher Cross. We saw Cheap Trick. We saw Foreigner. We saw the Eagles. And there was one other band that we saw, and I can't remember what it was. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. But I've never been around marijuana. And there are all these people, all these adults or college kids smoking pot around us. And I was like, I ended up falling asleep from all the fumes.
You got a contact high. That's hilarious.
I did. And I was like, what the heck? And then my friend Angie, she's like, Julie, wake up. You're going to miss da-da-da. I said, I'm not even tired. What happened? And her dad told us later when we left that night, he goes, well, it was because of all the marijuana, you know, that was being smoked around you girls, and you girls have never been around that. Breathing in the fumes, you know, like you said, a contact high. So the next day, her dad took us down to the French Quarters, and that was neat. You know, we got to eat at one of those places and have, I guess you'd say, Cajun food for the first time. I'd never had like jambalaya, crawfish, or anything like that. So good. So good.
I'm not brave enough to try any of that gumbo or anything like that. I can't do the seafood or anything like that.
You and Boxer either. He was saying you both were saying last Friday night, nothing from the ocean or lakes or whatever. But, you know, it's interesting because like my senior year of high school, they threw senior parties and dinners for people in your honor. Like I went to a lot of luncheons back there, and different people, it wasn't necessarily the parents, but different people would host these parties. And I'd never heard of anything like that. And I guess, well, they did it like my sister's senior year too. And the boys don't really go to anything unless it's a boy-girl thing. But I went to all these fancy luncheons and stuff. And you know what? I always felt like a fish out of water. I was like, this just isn't me.
It's overkill what they do. Oh, it's just overkill.
Well, it was.
Fancy.
The 2 best parties that we went to, I'll never forget. I don't know why I'm saying names. Was Bert Hamill and one of the other guys that their parents threw the parties, and they were rednecks. And so pure up rednecks.
So they're fun.
They were, and they were the ones that had like the hot rod kind of cars and in high school that would make all the noise and everything.
Mhm.
And they were jacked up in the back. And people said, oh, there's just nothing but rednecks, but they were fun. Their parents got together and threw a party. And of course, everybody in the class is invited when it's, you know, one of these kind of parties. And it was a crawfish party and stuff. And I was like, well, I don't really remember having crawfish before, but then I forgot when we were down there. I believe we had it in New Orleans. It was so good. It tastes like baby lobster because when they boil it and whatnot, they use like lemon, all these spices, and they use butter. And then when it gets out, you know, you just peel them, and they're so small. You just peel them and basically suck the tail, and that's it. But then they had there's some kind of rice they make. I think it's called dirty rice or something like that. So we had the
Is it the brown rice that they make?
Yeah.
Something like
so
that?
Yeah.
It's kind of
something
bitter.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We had
yeah,
that, and
I like
Yeah,
Mexican
so-
rice.
I do too. I tell you what, that's funny. I'll tell that story later. I'll tell you about that, about
Okay.
Mexican food. But yeah, and then that the springtime, a bunch of the families got together, and it was my mom and dad, and gosh, there must have been 30 of us that our parents got together, and they threw us a barbecue in our honor. Plus, they had a DJ and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun because the whole class was invited. So there's just like maybe 3 or 4 parties the whole class was invited to. Other than that, it was always the girls, you know, in honor of and stuff. I told my mom, I said, I hope nobody does that for me. I said, I'd rather have a, you know, you guys all pitch in and do a barbecue or whatever. I said, I'd like that better. Because that way, you know, springtime, you can wear your shorts and
Mhm.
be comfortable. And, you know, I mean, because we had to dress up every day for school back there. No uniforms, but you had to dress up, you know. I
And
mean,
isn't it
jeans-
really humid?
Oh my gosh, hot and
Yeah,
humid.
it sucks. Can't do
You
it.
weren't, no, you weren't allowed to wear shorts at all for school, except for if you're playing sports. And the interesting thing about the school back there, the only electives back there were singing in choir, being in the band, or drama. That was it.
Damn, that's nothing.
Well, exactly. Other than that, you know, I mean, straight up academic stuff. Nothing. I mean, that was it. I was like, no home ec, no this, no that, no, you know, no auto shop or metal shop for the guys. And a lot of these people, their families were, you know, a lot of them were farmers, you know, bankers, doctors, and lawyers, but they just didn't have anything for us, you know. And I was kind of bummed out about that because that was one of the big things that all the kids here in Woodland were looking forward to, is being able to go to a public junior high or the high school where you had all these electives. Well, I missed out on all that. But I'll kind of backtrack. When I was in 9th and 10th grade, I played girls softball for the city, and a bunch of us in my class and at my school, we played softball and whatnot. And our first year, oh my gosh, we only won 1 game. And you know who we beat? The
Who?
best team that was undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
But there, I don't know if it was a parent or who watched us every game we went to. And I don't even know if it was our coach, but they were observing us all season, us girls and stuff, because we were all positive, always just gracious to the other teams, you know, always going up first. Good game, that kind of thing. And we laughed at each other when we make mistakes. And we were so positive. So at the end of the season, our coach came to us on our last game and he goes, listen, girls, somebody's been watching girls all season, and they bought tickets for all of you to go to this amusement park in Arkansas. And we're like, cool, you know. So the time that we went, we all wore our softball uniforms, our shorts, and our little jersey things, or I don't know what you call them, but we all wore them as a group to this amusement park. And it was so much fun. Some of the moms and dads drove us. We all caravan. And it's just those kind of things you just don't forget. you know. And back in high school, I loved drama. The first play I tried out for, I didn't get a part, but I worked backstage and did all the makeup for it.
Oh, okay.
For everybody. And that was so much fun. And then in my 10th grade year on up, I was in every play at the school. I just loved it.
Cool.
Yeah. It was just a blast, you know? So yeah, that's basically kind of how my high school years went. And then the September after I graduated in 1983, my mom and I headed back to California in the 280ZX and stuff. And my dad was already back out here working. What happened was my senior year, the fall of 1982, the government told the particular company that my dad worked for and Karen's dad worked for that they were too much of a monopoly. Do you think they're going to tell Bill Gates that? You know? And so back then the government used to do that. If you had too many companies and businesses under, you know,
Yep.
I guess an umbrella or whatever, they'd say you're too much of a monopoly. You have to sell off so much. So they sold the rice mill the beginning of my senior year. It was in October. And I said, okay. I said, what's going to happen? Are we moving back to Woodland? Where are we going? And my mom and dad said, well, we pulled you out the middle of your 8th grade year. It was really traumatic for me when they did that. I'm backtracking here. I'm kind of rolling my eyes because I keep thinking of things when you ask me about childhood. Okay. Anyways, they pulled us out, uprooted us to go to Mississippi. And it was traumatic because I had lifelong childhood friends that I went through from kindergarten through 4th grade at Holy Rosary. A bunch of us changed over, and all those friends up until, you know, middle of my 8th grade year. I did go to public school one semester of my 8th grade year, but I grew up with all these kids. We all went to church together and everything. And then plus all my cousins, pretty much all my cousins lived here. And so, and when you're young, you do a lot of things with your cousins too. And that was traumatic for me because when I moved back there, I just started packing on the pounds. I wouldn't eat dinner or anything in front of my family. I'd sneak food in my bedroom and I just started packing on the pounds because I went through bad depression back then, you know. But so anyways, getting back to my senior year, my parents said, no, you've made too many nice friends here. We're not gonna uproot you. You need to graduate with all the kids that you've known since you came here the middle of your 8th grade year, which that's what happened. And I'm glad that they did it, you know, did it that way. But then that, I guess it was in May because we'd go to school in August and we'd graduate in May and whatnot. And so that summer they put our house up for sale and it didn't sell till I think August or because we were back here in September, like the middle of September. So that was a hard thing to get adjusted to because then when you've been away from a lot of your friends, you know, you got to reconnect because everybody's doing whatever, or some are off at college. Because basically that would have been my freshman year of college. But, you know, it's just, I look at it as like God let everything work out to where I was able to reconnect with everybody. So, and I always say, you know, I feel blessed and privileged because I have all my friends from when I grew up in Woodland, and then all the people I went back to school with in Mississippi. A lot of them are in the southern states or back east, but there are several of us here in California.
Okay.
I'm the only one. No, Karen moved back this past year, so we're the only ones up in Woodland, Sacramento area, and there's a lot down south in LA and San Diego. But the interesting thing was, Sandman, when we were back in Mississippi, one of the guys that was younger than us, like if I was a junior, he was a sophomore, his sister and brother-in-law lived in Woodland. So after I had graduated and I was here a year or so, big old Yolo County Fair here, I was at the Yolo County Fair with some friends. All of a sudden, I saw this guy and he goes, Julie. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, Warner Walcott, you know, is that a Southern name or not? Warner Walcott.
Yeah.
And we ran into him and it was so funny. We just talked and caught up with other people that we went to school with. So that was kind of neat. And you're like, okay, yeah, it is kind of a small world from time to time. So that's basically my upbringing. Pretty
Okay.
strict.
Yeah.
I told that one story last Friday night about the football team in Florida and how I got grounded for drinking.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get out of high school and all that. How long was it before you became a CO?
Well, once I got established here in Woodland, I was going to Yuba College here, the old Yuba College, and I started working for a pediatric dentist, and he paid for all of us in the office to go to Cross Courts Athletic Club, which unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they just closed down and went out of business. And so I would play, I don't know if you've ever heard of volleyball before.
Is that water where you're in the pool and play volleyball?
No, it's a blue ball, and it's harder than a volleyball. And you have it, it's played in a racquetball court or a small court. And it's like you have 4 people on one side and 4 people on the other side. When you serve it, you have to serve it to where it hits the wall and goes over. That's why they call it volleyball instead of volleyball. And I used to play that all the time. Well, I didn't realize some of the people I was playing with, they were Woodland PD officers or deputy sheriffs or some connection there. And then one of our patients, the dad would always bring in the kids, and all of us girls used to comment all the time, oh, Mr. So-and-so's so good looking, you know? And so one day I was checking his kids in at the counter, and I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? He goes, oh, you can call me Bob, you know? And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, you know, Julie, he goes, you have such an outgoing personality and you seem so fun. He goes, I bet since you work here and deal with all the parents and all the different personalities, he goes, you can make a really good correctional officer. And I was like, well, what's that? You know, and he goes, well, they're trying to get rid of a lot of the deputy sheriffs out of the jail because it's costing too much money for them to work there. There will be still deputy sheriffs and sergeants and lieutenants there that run the jail, but they want to turn it over to civilians. And he goes, while you work, you'll have, you know, law enforcement status, but when you're not at work, you don't. So it's not like we could carry our badge or whatever out of work. It's just while you're working. And he goes, I think you'd be really good at that. And I was like, really? And he goes, one of these days, why don't you tour the jail? And I was like, oh, okay. And then my friend's husband was a deputy sheriff. And he goes, oh, well, I'm going to be, he worked in the court, a bailiff. He goes, well, I'm putting in some OT right now because we're short staffed. He goes, why don't you come down on the jail when I work OT on Wednesday night? You know, he goes, you'll be able to see how the inmates go to visiting, and, you know, and you'll be able to see some of the inmates as they're there, because that jail was where it still had bars, the old cement hallways. They weren't pods or anything. And oh my gosh, the first thing I'm there, the first hour I'm there, there's a fight with the inmates out there and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and I've never seen real life fist fight before and whatnot. So I was like, oh, dang. And this guy ended up with a big old goose, you know, on his head, big old. I was like, gosh, that swelled up so fast. You know, and here all these guys are, the deputies and stuff, and the sergeant, they're hanging out in the control room. But some of them, as we used to say, were on deck, you know, because of so many inmates, people have to be on deck in case things happen. Well, here goes all these deputy sheriffs and the ones out there trying to break up the fight. And I guess the guy that was in the fight, he was known for getting in fights, usually starting them. Well, he didn't start it that time. And my friend's husband goes, still want to work here? I was like, wow, this is exciting, you know? And then, so I hung out there for a while, and I got to see the female inmates too and whatnot. And so it was just interesting. It was interesting. And then Bob said, why don't you come in the daytime and take a whole tour of the jail, which I did. And he goes, well, what did you think? And I was like, I think I could do this. You know, here I was, you know, when I'm doing this, I'm like 21 years old taking tours. And yeah, and I was just like, and that's where I told a story last week where the one inmate kept yelling out, you know, no tits, no ass to the one deputy and stuff. And finally, after she asked her sergeant and stuff, and she said, that's deputy no tits, no ass to you, you know, and that story just has stuck with me all these years because it's funny, you know, and whatnot. And I got to do this. Somebody's calling me, and it's that thing keeps popping up. There's another one. I'm sorry, but anyways, so I said, yeah, I think I can do this. He goes, okay. He goes, why don't you go get the application across the street, which I did, and I sat on it for a while and started thinking, okay, do I really want to do this? I've got a nice part-time job, and I'm going to junior college. What do I want to do? Do I want to do this, or do I want to finish going to college? And so I thought, you know, this is so exciting and stuff. So I thought I'm gonna do the correctional officer thing. So I fill out the application. You know, I was interviewed. First, you go through an oral interview, and that was funny. They're all being serious on the panel. Here's all these sergeants, lieutenants, and a couple deputies. And then my best girlfriend's dad was on the panel, which I had a feeling because he was one of the very first correctional officers there. And I'll never forget, Lieutenant Ramos said, well, Julie, do you have a drinking problem or anything? I said, absolutely, I do. And they all kind of looked. I said, yep, I drink 8-ounce glasses of water a day. And I said, and I pee a lot too. They just all started busting up laughing. And then they were asking me about my driver record, because I had tons of speeding tickets on my record. I almost got my license taken away.
Oh no.
And they go, yeah, I've always liked to drive fast. I always wanted to go on a racetrack and see how fast I could go, or, you know, get in a race car, but I never had that opportunity. But it was funny because they said, well, we see you like to drive fast, and that you've had a lot of tickets. And I said, yeah, I do. And they said, well, is that going to be a problem if you work here? And I said, no. I said, I could start learning how to drive within the speed limits and stuff. And then I'm going to kind of cheat here because after I had worked there a couple of years, I was with a friend, and we were coming home from Tahoe. And when you work at the sheriff's department, they want you to get your license plates to where if you get pulled over, it comes up Yolo County Sheriff's Department. They give you a special form for DMV because, you know, of all the gang problems and different things like that, we can get in later. They don't want people like running your plates and finding out who you are, where you live and stuff. And so I got pulled over one time, and I didn't think my friend had a weapon in the car and stuff. And I didn't know there was a 9mm under his seat. And because the CHP officer, he went to run he goes, I'll be right back. I'm going to run your plates. Or he had run them, and he was waiting to hear back. And he goes, oh, Officer Tolson, I see you work at Yolo County Sheriff's Department. He goes, I think I'm going to have a conversation with your lieutenant since you were going 90 miles an hour and whatnot. He goes, do you realize, he goes, I could arrest you right now for reckless driving and going, you know, way over the speed limit. I was like, oh crap, you know, and he was lecturing me about that. He goes, do you think you can put it to 55, at least 60 on your way home? I'm like, yes, sir, you know. Well, the next day, and my friend's dad can be very stern because he's a retired CHP officer. And at the time, he was our jail commander. And after we had our briefing, he called me in his office. He chewed my butt out big time. He goes, you're lucky you didn't get in a wreck and that you're not dead right now. He goes, if I ever hear this happening again, he goes, you're going to get written up and you're going to be in big trouble. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I was scared. because I've never been arrested, never gotten any type of trouble with the law besides speeding tickets, and what young person doesn't get speeding tickets? I would say usually more or less young guys do, teenage guys and college, because they like to drive fast. But yeah,
Yep.
That's me. I like to drive fast. Sometimes I kind of feel like I was a tomboy or something, but then other people go, no, you dress too prissy and not too prissy and stuff. So however you want to perceive me is how people perceive me. But I feel like I'm talking so much. Please
No,
ask
it's
questions.
fine. No, it's perfect. No, everything you're covering is perfect because it's better to let it flow instead of interjecting.
Well, anyways, okay, so I had that oral interview. After the oral interview, I had to go for this polygraph. And they sit there and make you fill out all these papers. And then the guy talks to you. Gosh, he must have talked to me for an hour or more. Well, have you ever taken a pen from work? And I was like, well, yeah. He goes, do you know that's stealing? I said, taking a pen from the office? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, have you ever done this? And has this ever happened? And did you ever do this? And on and on and on. Well, here I am, like 21, 22 years old, taking all these tests. I'm like, to me, that's not stealing. So all these things came up saying I was lying about all these questions. And he goes, I think we need to take this again. He goes, and I said, look, I am not going to say that I'm a thief for taking a pen home from the office.
Yeah.
Or when I was a kid, getting in my parents' change thing and taking change so I could go get a candy bar at the grocery store. I said, come on. I said, who hasn't done stuff like that? That's not like stealing from a business or shoplifting. He goes, well, it is considered stealing. So it still came up as I was lying. I said, well, I've never stolen in my life. I was like, come on. And there were some other questions or whatever. So anyways, I guess they took it to the recruitment department who's recruiting, which was Bob from the dentist office, and then my friend's dad. And they're like, okay, we've known Julie for a long time. And my friend's dad's like, I've known her since she was a kid. She's never done any of that stuff. And part of it was I was nervous. And when you're nervous taking a polygraph, if you've never done one, a lot of it's based on your heartbeat and things like that. And you're nervous, and I was nervous. So sure, things aren't going to come up right and stuff. But anyways, I passed. Technically, they passed me on that. And then after that, I had to take a psychological test. And let me tell you what, this one guy, I didn't know he was a deputy sheriff. He was on, I guess, like, how do some of the departments, like a reserve deputy. Okay. He was around my age. Oh my gosh. He was this big, tall, blonde guy, so nice looking. And he had green eyes like my green eyes. And I was like, oh man, I'd like to go out with him, I thought he was so handsome. But at the time, I had already had a boyfriend. But let me tell you, I had my eye on him. And then I found out that he and his girlfriend were going to have a baby. I was so disappointed. But every time I got to work with him, though, we always talked and got along really well. But hindsight's 2020. I was never one to break up anybody. And
yeah, that's good though.
But anyways, yeah. So after that, then I had to, that same day, after I took my psychological, I went for a physical. And then after that, they did my background check and stuff. And then they only gave me, they're like, they don't hardly give you any notice to tell your employer. To me, I think a 2-week notice is sufficient.
Yeah.
Well, they called me, I don't know if it was like a Thursday or something. Can you come to work Monday? Can you come to training Monday? I said, I have to give my boss at least a week or two notice. They said, well, we can't wait 2 weeks. Can you at least give them a week notice? And I said, okay. So I gave the dentist a week notice and I felt really bad. I just said, I'm really sorry, but they wanted me to start, on Monday. And I said, I couldn't do that to you and leave you high and dry in the office. So yeah, I started and it was interesting. They had us kind of first working in the jail because they only sent a few at a time to the little academy they had. because they don't want to be short staffed, and they wanted us to have jail experience and stuff before we went to the academy. Not everybody got jail experience before they went, but our group did. And I think there's like 5 of us that were hired when I was hired. Oh my God. They had us not get our uniforms right away. We wore black pants and like white button down shirts, and then you know, black shoes, like black Reeboks or some kind of a shoe that you'd be comfortable with working on cement all day. Well, one day we went to lunch and everybody's like, hey, let's go to McDonald's. Well, you remember the Yugos, the cars, the Yugos, how small they were? I don't know if they were like a Russian car or whatever.
Like the little Geos?
It might, sorry, I gotta let Oriole out.
It's okay.
Sorry about that, guys. It was called a Yugo, and it's like so small, almost like one of those smart cars, but it wasn't built like that to where they have 2 seats or whatever. And this had a back seat. So we go to McDonald's, we eat lunch. We're talking about our training that day. We get out of the door at McDonald's, getting ready to go back, and this one gal's Yugo, we got in the wrong Yugo. See, because she didn't lock her doors, and that other car wasn't locked, and it was down here, and her car was a few down here. We all pile in the Yugo. She sticks her key in there and it wouldn't turn. She goes, I don't think this is my car. We just all started busting up.
Well, how'd they get the other one out of the
Huh?
Was the other one still there?
Yeah, it was still there. It was parked like 3 cars down. We just started busting up, and of course when we were back, I'm sorry, it was so funny.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
And when we went back to our training, we were all laughing, and they're like, what happened at lunch, you guys? And we said, well, we all decided to go to lunch together today. And we told the story, what happened. And I forget who was training us that afternoon or what we were training on, but our trainer just started busting up laughing. Because like the first couple of weeks, before we really started working in the jail, before we went off to that little academy months later, you know, we had training classes on drugs, how to identify drugs. I'd never seen drugs in my life. I didn't know what black tar heroin looked like. I didn't know what crystal meth looked like. I'd assume cocaine was white because you saw it on movies, you know, hypothetically. And so we had like a drug training class. We had classes on how to identify different gang tattoos and whatnot. That was very interesting to me because even till this day, I can always tell if I run into somebody like in the grocery store, dollar store, wherever, who's been in prison and who hasn't, because I see the tattoos and I can see their demeanor and how they act and stuff. I'm not saying everybody has a certain demeanor, but yeah, it's real interesting because even to this day, I can identify certain tattoos. I'm sure maybe some of them have changed, maybe some of them haven't. I don't know, but yeah, so that was pretty interesting going through all that. We had self-defense classes, and I know I told this story one time on an interview with LA Times, but this is funny. They had us out at the fairgrounds doing searching techniques on how to search somebody when they're arrested, if you work booking, and self-defense and things like that. So on a break, one of the guys that worked with SNI security investigations, he said, hey, Julie, come here. And he called a couple of other people and he gave us weapons to hide and stuff. So like, and he goes, oh, you guys just come here for a minute. I want to talk to you. Didn't say to anybody what he was going to do. And he gave me a little 22 and he goes, I want you to put this in your bra somewhere. So when they search you, hopefully somebody will find it. One guy had a knife on him, and one guy had like a switchblade and different things like that, and different weapons. Well, so we go out there on our break and, you know, yakking it up with everybody else. And because there was quite a few people at the time in that particular training. And so they said, okay, well, we want you guys to practice your searching. We'll show you again how you search a male properly, how you search a female properly. And, you know, I don't want you to take this wrong, but in a female, especially if you got an underwire bra, they want you to grab the wires here and like shake, shake their breasts and stuff, because sometimes they were telling us a story how they missed a small 22 from a certain gang's girlfriend, and that could have killed somebody in the jail, and they missed it, in the jail at one time. So mine, I put right in there. And when you search a female, you're supposed to go up the breast line like this, and then take that part of the bra and shake it to see if anything's going to fall out. Because if you're a big busted woman, you can hide a lot of things in there. I'm sure if you guys have ever seen 90 Day Fiance and Angela on there, the big blonde gal from Georgia, she puts all kinds of stuff in her bra, like her cigarettes and her cell phone and all kinds of stuff. And depending on how you're raised, a lot of people do that. Well, anyways, here I have this 22. Everybody else, their weapons were found, and they said, well, we still have one more weapon out there and stuff. And so they had the group of us, up there and whatnot. They're like, well, who has it? And they go, well, you guys are gonna have to go back to your searching. So they go back to the searching, and finally one of the guys that they had given one of the knives to, he got brave and he took my bra and shook it, and out comes the gun and stuff. And I mean, it was just hilarious. But on the serious side, they're like, this is serious, because if nobody found this and this was real life, that woman could have taken that gun and shot you right there in the booking room, or shot another deputy, So you have to be careful how you search a man and how you search a female. And so, it was a lot of training. And then we got to go work as I call it, on deck. We used to call it on deck at the old jail. And so you learn a lot doing that too. And I've shared some of my stories, but it's interesting because I'm going to tell you this one story. My best friend that I grew up with, she and her husband were newly married, and they were living out in the boondocks in Dunnigan here in Yolo County. Well, one day, one Sunday, they were out for a walk, and they came across a dead body. And he told her, he goes, I don't want you looking. I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and you see part of it. He goes, go to the house and call 911. And it's interesting because just a couple months ago, we were talking about this around Christmas time. He's never forgotten what he's seen. He goes, sometimes I still have nightmares of it. Well, come to find out, it was a Hell's Angels hit, and they dumped the body out there and done again and stuff, or took the guy out there and killed him and left the body, and they took off. Well, these guys, when they were in the jail, they were all tatted up and stuff, but I guess they were high enough in Hell's Angels that they had Hell's Angels attorneys, and so they put them in 3-piece suits and whatnot, and they went through this murder trial, and their main witness was a heroin addict and a prostitute, and so she was not credible, and so they got off on this murder.
Wow.
And stuff. And so when they got released, it was on my shift, once the court paper and stuff went through, they got dressed, got released, and it was just crazy because a lot of us said, you know what, we wouldn't want to be caught in a dark alley with those two. And their laugh, oh my gosh, I'm not kidding, they had the most evil laugh I've ever heard of in my whole life. And I'll never forget it. I can't duplicate it, but I won't ever forget how that laugh was. And it just put chills up your spine and whatnot. When I worked in the old jail, we had a correctional officer that hooked up with the Aryan brother associate, and she got pregnant in the jail. And this was right before we moved to the new jail too. They fired her. But she went through all this stuff with our union rep, who actually happened to be Bob and whatnot. That was the deputy. He had been going to law school and whatnot to become a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so he ended up being our attorney union rep guy. And so there was nothing in our policy and procedure manual saying the correctional officers could not fraternize with inmates like it was in the, in the deputies' policy and procedure manual. So they ended up having to hire her back. And everybody was mad, because here this guy is just real cocky and it was just not good. And he didn't treat her right when he got out. And when we were at the new jail, I didn't know he was out of prison. When one night I was leaving and he followed me over to my ex-fiance's house. And he was in her white Bronco, one of those little white Broncos, not the big ones. And he had this hand on the steering wheel. And then he raised this hand up like that and went bang. And I was out there talking to my fiance at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I thought at first he was going to draw up a real gun. And I thought, okay, well, that's a threat on my life. So, and he has no business following me.
Yeah.
So I immediately went back to the jail, told our security investigation team, they called his parole officer, and he was arrested that night for doing that to me. And then they had a parole hearing, and at our jail, they used to have parole hearings when the parolees would, get their parole violated. And anyways, they wanted to interview me for that, but they didn't want to interview me in front of him and whatnot. And his parole officer, let me tell you what, this guy was sleazy. I mean, he was married and he was always trying to come after us girls, Hey, here's my card, give me a call, or let me have your number and I'll give you a call when I'm in town next. We can go to dinner, or if you want to go to a concert over at the Arco Arena or whatever. I was like, are you kidding me? You're married, But that's his parole officer was sleazy. But anyways, he got a parole violation, and I'm almost positive it was for a year. So he went back to prison, and she was fit to be tied because I turned him in. And I told her, I said, I don't care if it's you or anybody else, I would have done the same thing, But she was kind of like trying to always intimidate people. And but they let her continue working there. And I was, when this happened, I was working overtime on her shift, and I didn't take any more overtime on her shift because I didn't want to deal with her. I didn't want to run into her. And the thing about it was too, is, she took some overtime on my shift, and I'm like, how can they really still let her work here when here her husband's an associate, and then she's working a pod or going on break and going down to one of these pods where his friends are. And she's having these long conversations with them, for like over 30 minutes. I'm like, what is she telling them? Or is she just talking about him or her? Or are they talking about other things? Or is she giving away all of our confidential information, our phone numbers, our addresses? And this is before cell phones, by the way. So that dates me, but but anyways, it was crazy, and then this one officer, in fact, I heard recently he just passed away, but he was one of the officers that was bringing in drugs into the pods. Really nice Hispanic guy, very nice looking. And we'd always see him talking to, certain inmates that were, they always had XIV on them, and but they weren't gang, I don't know, they were gang members, but they weren't like,
they weren't
just northerners kind of thing. They were northerners is what they were. And anyways, I'm like, gosh, he's been awful chummy with them, And I thought, well, some of them just like to talk, because I'd have inmates that would come up and just talk to me or do that to distract you. And come to find out, he, the CO, he was in a gang. He was a northerner. They didn't do his background check very well.
Yeah.
So no wonder he was all chummy with these guys. And then I was roommates with one of the officers on another shift, and he would call our house on her days off at night and whatnot. And I had called in sick one night and she wasn't home. So I answered the phone and I told her, I said, oh my gosh, this sounds like inmate so-and-so. She goes, you're kidding me. Well, then she got back in from her outing. I mean, we were getting calls like midnight, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. when this one CO was working, because both of them would be calling our place and she goes, oh my gosh, that is so-and-so. We were mad because that's like confidential information. If you want to call us, you know, when you're working, another officer and such, to chit chat because you're friends, you know, that's one thing, but don't sit there and give our information out.
Yeah,
you know,
that's not right.
Oh no, it's not right.
With the
You know?
gangs in there, who would you say was the deepest? Was it the northerners, the whites?
The northerners and the whites. We had one inmate from Yellow County, but he was a southerner.
Did you
And
guys separate them?
Every time he came in, because there was only one of him, they'd have to put him in Ag Seg, because if they would have put him out on, you know, because our jail back then, they've added on to it since, but back when they first opened it, and I want to say 1989 is when they opened it, or early 90s, somewhere around there. It was already too small to begin with, because they had planned it way back when. And the moment we got all the other inmates in there, it was already over full, you know, plus new arrestees coming. And so anyways, what were we talking about? I'm sorry.
It was the deepest, you know. Did you have a lot of Aryan Brotherhood members, New Western Familia members come in?
Yeah. Well, yes, we did. We did have them. And you could see their tattoos, because they had the one sombrero with a knife through it on his arm. Oh, the one southerner, he had to be put in that site just for his safety. He wasn't a PC, but you can't put him on a mainline pod, because they get the crap beat out of him, or somebody would stab him. And back then, Sandman, you talk about, okay, a jail is just a holding facility that the sheriff holds in your county for people that are on no bail warrant, or they can't afford their bail. And basically there's no bail on a 187, which is a murder. And so you have a lot of obviously indigent people that are in jails that their families can't afford their bail and things like that. So, you know, a lot of people bail out, a lot don't. Well, our jail was overcrowded already, but getting back to the gangs, we had mostly all northerners. We did have, I believe we had some heavy hitters, and that's what security investigations would deal with. And if they were real heavy, they automatically went to Ag Seg.
Okay.
I remember this one guy they brought in, and I think they brought him in from Folsom, from the shoe, when they used to have a shoe at Folsom, old Folsom. And I'll never forget the guy's last name. His last name was Mcelhiney. In fact, I didn't know how to spell
Big Mike.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. It was Mcelhiney. And I was working booking on my shift, and they called down to booking, not over the radio, but on the phone. And they said, look, lock everybody up in the little holding cells there. Get everybody out of the way of booking and stuff, because this guy's coming through. Well, he had told one of the deputies that I've known for years, that was close to my age, that I went to Yuba College with. In fact, the Monroe Center is named after his grandfather. His last name's Monroe. And he goes, look, Tolson, he goes, when we bring this guy through, he goes, we don't want you near him. He had threatened several of the officers with their lives, and that, especially this one officer, last name Deputy Monroe. He said, he goes, I'm going to rip your heart out with my bare hands. And he was threatening, and they all took him serious. And I was like, well, who's this Mcelhiney guy that everybody's always talking about and stuff? and they had to put him in our county jail because he had a court date in, here in Yolo County and stuff. I have no idea what it was for, but let me tell you what, I've never been real scared of inmates, but when I saw that guy and how big he was, and yeah, it bothered me. I got goosebumps and
Yeah.
stuff. So you've
He's
heard
a
of
somebody.
Mcelhiney.
Yeah, he's in the feds now, but yeah, he's a big name. He's a known name. Yeah. He used to bring in tons of heroin to Leavenworth and all that stuff. So his name's gotten around a lot.
Isn't he Aryan Brotherhood?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Well,
Yep.
during this time when I was working in the jail, Aryan Brotherhood was really big, in our jail besides the Northerners. At this particular time when I was working, they had a hit out on several of the CEOs that worked at Folsom. And one guy worked in Folsom, but he lived in West Sacramento. And they went after him and shot up his car. And he was in his car, I guess, coming home from work. And sorry, there's a mosquito. You're gonna have to edit a lot. But he was coming home from work and they shot at him. And they found out where he lived. And they did an emergency. And I don't know if the feds did it or what, but they moved him and his family out of there like that. Like no notice, because they didn't want them to get killed. Because the AB were after this officer and some other ones. And yeah, that one CDC officer, they moved him to Florida, clear across the country, and stuff for his safety and his family's safety. And then, yeah, and the Aryan Brotherhood, you don't mess with them. They'll come after you. That's why that one guy, I went right to security and investigations at our jail because he was an associate. I don't think it was a full-fledged AB member, but and back in that day, we had a few of those in our old ADSEG jail. We had a new extra familia guy. We had, I think there were like 3 AB guys back in the day. And I've always been curious, because I'm thinking, okay, I was this old back then, and they were because you can see, looking at files and stuff, how old they are, what crimes they commit. And I'm always curious, once in a while, old things pop into my head. I'm like, gosh, I wonder if they ended up getting killed in prison or if they ever got out and straightened up their life. And if they did, if they got killed out on the streets or whatever. But I think some of these AB guys probably got hit in prison. That's my opinion.
Or they went to the feds, one of the two.
Exactly. Because this one guy, he also gave me the creeps. And the thing is, we had this one CO. She was from West Sac, but she did time in the military, but she was in the military, and I can't remember, I think she was in the Army, but her brother was a white power guy. I don't know if he was full-fledged AB or just an associate, but her brother came to our jail. And so sometimes she would ask, hey, after dinner and stuff was over, because on her night shift, sometimes she'd just go to the kitchen and take all those guys in cross felony at the old jail, extra food, because they're always working out in their cells or whatever, and they're always hungry and whatnot. So yeah, her brother was back in there when these AB guys were back there. Yeah. And the one guy I'll never forget, oh my gosh, some of these laughs to me are like so evil. And this guy, not very many people intimidated me when I worked there, but he did. I didn't want to be anywhere around him because I was like, okay, this guy to me looks like a straight up killer. Even though at that time, because I was so new, I didn't know his charges. But yeah, and she just sit back there for hours after she'd do like rounds every 30 minutes. She sat back there for hours, visit with her brother and all these guys.
That's crazy.
Okay. I'm like,
so,
okay.
So her brother was probably skinhead or something, but
well, he wasn't a skinhead and whatnot. I think he was an associate of the AB, a big white power guy, and just had, I mean, some of these guys back in the day, because they had weights in prison back then. I mean, they'd come out just so muscular and buffed and whatnot. And he was one of those guys. But it's like, then when they get to the county, they lose a lot of that because, we didn't have weight. We had a weight machine, but that's different, than having free weights and stuff. But I was like, how can even her sergeant allow her to sit back there and talk for hours at a time with her brother and all these guys? I just didn't get that. And then speaking of AB, there was this one AB guy. They finally had to pull him out of there because I think he was going to try to get out of the gang. And they put him in his own cell. And back in the day of these old jails, and our jail was so small because our county was pretty small and it's growing, but they had 2 solitary cells, and they were for men and whatnot. And they put this one AB guy back there, and I don't know if he's still alive or not, but his name was Ronnie Keys. And somehow they intercepted mail from him. They went ahead and got it, and they made a copy of it and stuff. And it says, yeah, when you get to prison, or however they said it, you're going to be pushing up daisies, meaning that they were going to they were going to kill him. So, and of course, obviously the word was out. And so as a training mechanism, they don't let us see all the letter because they blacked things out before they showed it to some of us. But they said, see, this is what can happen. It was interesting because at the old jail, several of us got pulled in one at a time in security investigations office. And I was one of them. And they told me, they said, okay, Tolson, you need to get a concealed weapons permit and stuff, and be very careful every time you go home, because they found a hit list in Folsom. And some of our COs and deputies' names were on there, plus other facilities. And they said, your name's on there.
Oh, shit.
I got so scared. Actually, here you're 22, 23 years old, just starting your job. And they find a hit list on Folsom. And CDC is the one that called our jail to give them a list of the names from our county who was on their hit list. And I was one of them. I was like, no, this can't be it. And so they go, yeah, because obviously you go by the rules and you don't mess around. And I was like, oh gosh, I cried. I mean, I was scared. I thought something was going to happen to me that night when I was leaving, and obviously nothing happened. And I'm sure a lot of those guys, because that was like 34, almost 35 years ago, sure a lot of those guys are probably dead by now, and things are different. But yeah, that was a scary time in my life, that happened and things like that. But yeah, that Mcelhiney was in our jail. And I can remember this one guy, his name was Benito Gonzalez, and he had the big NF sombrero on his stomach and stuff. And I don't know if that guy's alive. I have no clue.
Not
the ones
sure.
the ones that I've not run around with, but have run into in my town, some of them have straightened their lives out, become born again Christians and serving God. And we have one guy that I met several years ago. I never knew him, or if I did, I didn't remember him being in the jail, but he and his wife go to my church now. He's he came to know Christ in prison, and he led her to the Lord. And so he goes to my church, such a nice guy. Every Sunday I see him, he always gives me a big hug. He goes, Julie, how are you? And we talk and whatnot. And I asked him before I got sick this fall, I asked him, I said, I want to come over to your house and I want to talk to you, because they live over by where my mom and dad do. And I've taken him like brownies, he and his wife brownies and different things. But because of COVID, I never wanted to go in, this is when COVID first happened. And so I told him, I said, I'm going to come in and sit and talk to you, because I'm almost positive if he wasn't affiliated with the NF, he was in the NF. Because I heard so I want to talk to him about that. And I asked him, I said, would you mind or do you not want to talk about this? He goes, oh no, he goes, I'm open. He goes, I'd love for you to come over and, share a meal or have coffee with us and whatnot. And he met his wife. Okay. My friend, her son was in prison, and he was in a gang. Obviously, he's a northerner. Where he was out in the gang, I don't know, but that's how she met.
Okay.
That's how she met this guy, and they got married because he's her son. I don't want to say names because these are friends of mine. He said, Mom, I want you to meet my friend in here that I met, you know, and he's a really nice guy, this, that, and other thing. So her son introduced them. And so every time she'd go to visit, the visit would be with the both of them, you know. First she was visiting her son, and then when she met him that time, they just hit it off. So when she goes sign up for a visit, she visit both of them at the same time. So they were at the same table, and they ended up falling in love, and I think they got married when he was in prison and whatnot. And then her son, he was killed by the gang because he wanted out of the gang. And I know it was like, I think a year or two ago, right before COVID, it was like the 18th or 19th anniversary of his death. And she still, you know, what parent wouldn't, you know, have good memories and plus horrible memories about how he died. But yeah,
he must have been a NR member or something because they killed him. But so what caused you to leave being a CO?
Oh boy, a number of things. I'll be honest. I would say partially a guy I was dating, and then the thing that hit the nail on the head is, okay, once my friend's dad wasn't our jail commander anymore, this woman took over, and I did not like her at all. And it was pretty evident she didn't like me because I teach you in the academy, and she was the one that even taught us this. You do for one inmate, you do for all the inmates. Well, I was working the female pod this, I don't remember when it was. And this gal was in there from West Sac. She was a heroin addict, probably a prostitute, even though she was married, because a lot of the husbands would, you know, make their wives do that so they have money for their drugs or food. Okay. Well, when she'd get off her heroin, she'd be all depressed and crying and stuff. Well, it was her birthday. So what does a jail commander do? She goes into the kitchen and said, oh, will you make a birthday cake for inmate so-and-so? I was pissed when she brought that cake into the female pod and they sang happy birthday. I was so mad. I told my two friends that I worked with that they called us the Bermuda Triangle, saying we're airheads, but we weren't. And I was pissed. We got all three of us got together on break, and I said, this is so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's she gonna do? Go down to the kitchen every single day and have cakes baked for every single inmate? And it was a large sheet can cake for the whole female section. And I was mad. So they ended up calling all three of us in the office because I'm the one that said something to my other two co-workers that I was friends with them outside of work and stuff. And my sergeant called us in, and she called us in, and she goes, Oriel's getting sick. I'm sorry.
Oh.
She just threw up on the towel on my bed that she lays on.
Oh. Yeah, that Ruka throws up sometimes too for whatever reason. I think they eat too much and then they run around.
Well, she goes outside and eats the grass and stuff, or she finds something out there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and eats it and then comes in. Why can't they do that outside?
I don't know.
But getting
They
back
always
to
do it in the house. They
Oh,
always
I
do
know.
it in the house.
Well, anyways, oh geez, all over. She did it on the towel and then all over my anyways, never mind. Let's get back to this interview. But okay, so she did this birthday cake. So they call us in. Well, I don't know what your girl's problem is about this. And I said, listen, I said, you tell us, you do for one, you do for all. I said, how do you get away with making her a birthday cake and make her feel special? But when the other females have birthdays, you haven't done that for them. And they're asking me, well, do I get a birthday cake if I'm still in jail on my birthday? You're putting me in a bad position here,
Mhm.
you know? And of course, I'm mouthing off because that's what I do. I always have to get the last word in. And sometimes, you know, you need to know when to shut up. And I'm like, okay, well, if I knew a lot of things that I know now, back then, I would
Yep.
have handled all kinds of situations differently. Well, so I was really mad about that. And she knew it, you know, and the other two girls, we finally finished our break out front, and all three of us were mad. They're like, you know, she's showing favoritism and da, da, da. You're not supposed to do that, you know, because if you start doing that and do things for inmates, they're going to try to get you caught up on doing things, you know. And so I thought, well, that's between the jail commander and this inmate then. But, you know, that put me in a bad position when I
Yeah.
had to work that female housing unit all month, you know, because some of the gals said, well, when do I get a birthday cake and stuff? And I told her. So fast forward, gosh, a few years. And they brought I was working the male housing unit across from the female housing. I was working B1 housing. Every once in a while, Otto Knorr, who works for CHP, he used to work in Yolo County, he's over in Sac County now. He may be retired by now, I don't know. But he had a canine. He was canine unit for CHP in Yolo County. So every once in a while, they bring in the dog going through the pod, sniffing for drugs and stuff. Because a lot of places where they would trade their drugs at were, they brought these vending machines in the jail, a soda machine and vending machines. Instead of bagging up commissary, the inmates would get cards. They put the money on the book. They'd load the cards up when it was commissary week and stuff to where they could go to the vending machine and get stuff out. Well, come to find out, whoever had drugs in the pod, that's where they were exchanging the drugs at, was at the vending machine, because the dog hit on that. And then the dog hit on my bathroom. And so then all of a sudden I go on vacation, and it was the officer's bathroom that the dog hit on. Well, I'm not just the only officer that works there. There's, you know, 3 other shifts. So obviously, in my opinion, somebody that was an officer was bringing drugs in.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing that I found out in that pod was that one guy that I was telling you about earlier that got the gal pregnant. Well, he came back into the jail, and I was really mad that he used to be in cross felony all the time. Now the jail commander went and put all these guys out on mainline that used to be in cross felony because of their associations and things. And so he was in my pod. Well, come to find out, he was, in my opinion, raping these young guys that were coming in that had never been in jail before. Because this one young kid, he came to the officer's desk and he wanted to talk to me, but all these guys were around. And it was that one guy, you know, that kept watching him and stuff. So finally, when it was lockdown time, I said, hey, what have you been wanting to tell me? And he told me what had happened to him. So I got, as soon as lockdown happened and I was able to get out of my pod for a break, I went and told security investigations. And I said, if he did this to this kid and this kid wants out of there, and he shouldn't even be housed in with this guy, he should be housed in with somebody else. And I said, that guy needs to get moved. And they said, well, word will get out to the other pod and stuff, A1 pod, because we had A1 and B1 pods for the main line. There were 76 men in each. And then they had two small pods in classification and A2 pod. And they're not going to put somebody that's already on mainline back in classification. So this kid got rolled up and went to the branch jail. So they went back and investigated who's being housed in there, because some of the cells were double bunked and that one was double bunked, who had been in there with that one particular guy that got the CO pregnant. So if they were still in the jail and went to the branch jail or whatever, they started interviewing them, and they had the same unfortunate experience.
Damn.
And stuff, which, okay, so that happened and the drug thing happened, and those big white power guys that were associates started writing grievances on me like crazy and stuff. Well, Officer Tolson's writing us up too much. If the dog hit on her bathroom, obviously she's bringing in drugs and da 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 da. So this is like around November, December, because it was around December time because we had our Christmas party. And I went to the Christmas party. Everybody was praising me for what I caught and this, that, and the other thing. Here I'm getting praised one Saturday night and stuff at this. I go back to work for a couple of days when it's my shift. And then I go off on a family vacation and stuff for, I don't know, 10 days or whatever. And when I get back, I'm hit with all this stuff from my sergeant who ran around with the Bermuda Triangle and the jail commander. They pulled me in. And believe it or not, they went through every one of my reports for probably like 3 years. And we're blaming all my write-ups around my menstrual cycle.
What?
Yeah. And then they started in about the drugs and stuff. Yeah. They said, well, obviously you write all these excessive reports and stuff around I said, how do you know when my cycle is? And I said, in fact, I didn't have one this month. I didn't have one that month. I said, why do you think I was out for a while having a surgery? And they're trying to do that. They're trying to accuse me of bringing drugs in and stuff. And I said, well, okay. If you're accusing me of that, I want evidence of that. And I said, also, if you think I'm on drugs, which you're accusing me of, I said, let's go to Woodland Memorial right now and I'll call up Bob and he can meet us down there and you can take my blood and my urine. And I said, you'll find nothing. And I said, I'll sue you and I'll sue the county and we'll see who wins. And it was after that, I said, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame you.
I said, I'm done. I thought, I don't need to be accused of something I've never done. I've never done drugs. I wouldn't even know where to buy them, just because they had 2 other officers that were bringing in drugs. The one guy that was a gang member, he was bringing in drugs. Who's to say it wasn't him? Because he was working the housing unit too, off and on. I didn't keep track of everybody's shift, who was working what. I knew who was working when I got off because it's like B team and D team were back to back and A team and C team were back to back. And so then another guy that I would change shifts with, he was bringing in those cartons of cigarettes that I told you guys about last Friday night on the live. He didn't know there was heroin in it. Number one, cigarettes, you can't bring them into the jail. And if you bring any contraband into the jail, that's an automatic felony and whatnot. So when they started accusing me of stuff like that, and when I said, and of course, back then I wasn't very nice with my language because I said, all right, let's take my ass down to the hospital. And I said, and let's go drug test me. And I said, you find your evidence and stuff, then accuse somebody. But you don't sit there and accuse somebody that hasn't done anything. Oh, no. Oh, we believe you. Because as soon as I mentioned suing and taking my blood and my urine and having our CO rep come down there, they shut up real quick.
Yeah, but
And
usually
they do. And they back down. And I thought, you know what? That's it. I'm done. So I gave up a good paying job, good retirement, good benefits. And I just thought, I'm done. I don't need to deal with this. And so I just, any job I could get, that's what I look for. So I started looking in the medical field. And so where do you think I went and worked? A
The
psychiatric
a
hospital.
psychiatric.
And that didn't last long because I couldn't stand it.
I don't. Yeah, no. Dealing with all those people, that's a whole nother interview in its own.
It's bad enough when you have all these inmates on psych meds and stuff. And I know I told this story before. I think it's so funny though. This one gal, when I was working the women's pod one night and stuff, gosh, her name was Phyllis Bruce. She was this big black gal. And unfortunately, even though she committed crimes and went down to the prisons down there. They had to have a psychiatric unit down there. I mean, I don't know what they had down there for the women, but she would be in and out of prison. But it's like she wasn't all there. And it's like one night she kept singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands," and she wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
And all the females kept pressing their buttons and stuff. Officer tells them, "Make her shut up." So after lockdown, the B1 pod and B2 pod, we could pop our doors open because there was still a main door locked that went into the main hallway. So we prop our doors open so one officer could go out for an hour or so and take a break, and then I could. But then you're supposed to basically do cell checks like every 15 to 20 minutes, go look, and stuff, make sure nobody's hanging themselves or whatever. But so I told my coworker across the way, I said, "You're not," he goes, "What's all that noise?" I said, "That's Phyllis singing." I said, and I told him, I said, "Ben, I cannot get her to shut up." I said, "All these inmates are complaining." So he pressed her intercom button. He goes, "Phyllis, this is God. I know you love me, and I do have the whole world in my hands, but you need to go to bed now, my child." She shut up for the rest of the night. And that
That's
Saturday
funny.
night was technically our Friday, but oh my gosh, we just chuckled about that the last time we worked together and stuff. And then I saw him, gosh, I don't know, about 20 years ago and stuff. And I don't know if Ben's still alive because he was older and he was having heart problems, but we ran into each other at the doctor's office one day. We said, "Hey, do you remember da da da?" We just started cracking up about that story, but it was pretty funny.
That's pretty
Yeah.
funny. But so we're gonna wrap this up, Julie. Thank you very much for sharing your story, and then those CO stories are really good. I think this will be a good one.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.